How many drinks do you have there, Beth?
I haven't had my morning tea, so I need really 2 cups of tea, and then I move on to coffee, but I've gone the other way. Everything's changed overnight. Right, should we start?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, here we are. This wasn't quite what we were expecting. Welcome to Electoral Dysfunction. This is me, Beth. I'm recovering from a whirlwind day. It was only when I saw myself on the news reported it that I believed it to be true. Anyway, Jess, where were you?
I had such disbelief that he was going to call an election yesterday that it wasn't really until about 11 o'clock at night, and when I walked out of Westminster, potentially for the very last time, I sort of don't believe it. So, yeah, here we are.
And Ruth, Where were you when you realised July 4th was actually happening?
So I was on my way to give a speech at a veterans event in Edinburgh. Our podcast recording was supposed to be recorded yesterday. I'd walked off a train because I got the phone call to say, oh no, we're not doing that. Beth's been sent to stand outside number 10.
Cancelled.
News has arrived.
We are going to talk about that. Why has Sunak decided to go now? What can we expect from the next 6 weeks? And also, what about the technical stuff? What happens now? What happens with Parliament? How does the campaign start? And also, the WhatsApp phone and the inbox have been red hot since Rishi Sunak got soaking wet on Downing Street as he confirmed a July 4th election. I hope that suit's been to the dry cleaners. He was absolutely drenched. We'll come back to that. You can WhatsApp voice note us on 07934 200 444 or email us electoraldysfunction@sky.uk. Should we start with the rumour mill? There was a frenzy, wasn't there? And I was getting some information from my sources, but it wasn't information that I could say yes or no. I just didn't know. No one knew. What really freaked me out, though, and made me feel very anxious, I felt quite sick at the beginning of the day because it's the anxiety of not knowing. Like, once you're going to the races, off you go. You put your hat on, you get your suit on, you're out the door. But what I was getting was from people that would normally quietly turn me away from these election rumours, I just had radio silence or non-denials. And it made me really, really nervous. And I thought something's going on. But at the same time, it was hard to imagine that he was actually going to call it then, for all of the reasons we've discussed in the pod.
I genuinely, I'm going to cut Rishi Sunak a tiny bit of slack and give him some credit here, is that I have never known a politician pull off a secret like Rishi Sunak. Genuinely, nobody saw this coming. So he obviously keeps good counsel, is what I would say. Tell Rishi Sunak your secrets. He's keeping them.
There were a few things that were afoot because Cameron had been on a trip. And
Albania, I think it was, wasn't it?
They put a massive poster of him up and then he just put it off.
Came back early. Grant Shapps had cancelled a trip. And then there were other bits and pieces that were really ramping this up that we were getting yesterday. So then one former cabinet minister phoned me and said, he had all the civil servants in last week talking about the timing of elections. So they were telling him, if you want to go in the summer, you've either got to do it this week or the first 3 days after we come back from recess, because otherwise it'll be too late because you've got to have a certain period of notice. Then someone was saying to me, oh no, we've just moved cabinet because he was in Austria the day before. So there was signs, and then there were sort of being slightly knocked down, but not completely knocked down. Anyway, in a way, it's all by the by because we're going now, aren't we?
Yeah, we're doing it.
But look, why? Why now? Why on earth now? I mean, I've got a bit of intel on that from number 10.
What we should do is me and Ruth should give you our theories as to why, and then you can give us the actual intel.
Yes, okay. Ruth, why do you think he's going now?
Well, I think he needs to have a story ready to go because he's done the morning rounds of TV after he's called this election. And it was bold, and he's not known for being courageous and stuff. So it did genuinely catch everyone on the hop. But he hasn't actually said why. And I think the problem with that is that other people will fill in why. So all the speculation is about the idea that he wanted to have a giveaway budget in the autumn or fiscal statement in the autumn, but he's got no headroom to do it. So there's no money left, basically. So he couldn't do anything. So a bit of good financial news on Wednesday in that inflation's down to 2.3%. Wages have been growing for 9 months consecutively over inflation. So he thinks people are beginning to feel it working. To be honest, I think people will just say that it was terrible. He'd had lots of defections. He wants to get in before the boats really ramp up over the summer. And actually, the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee's not really playing ball with bringing interest rates down to match inflation rates. And that might be a late summer thing, so that might be in August. But he can genuinely say now, if they go in July, you know, we've done our bit. We're just waiting on this to happen. And there will be jam tomorrow, as in your mortgage rates will come down.
I absolutely love that Rishi Sunak thinks people in the country are obsessing about the inflation figures.
He will be.
Yeah, he will be. He sees everything in like a sort of macroeconomic terms, and like people are going to be like, "Cool, it is good that the milk's only going up by 2 pence in the pound." Like, I mean, it's crackers. But anyway, so the other thing I think is that I think that there was potentially about to be some more scandals, and
Have you heard any?
she
has?
No, I'm not
that
going to
was
say. I think that there was about to be probably some more scandals of people who I think are probably going to stand down. In fact, they definitely are.
Have you heard something about this? Because you have just alerted me to a bat phone message I got on my phone last night saying, this is from a very senior Conservative source, there was more sleaze in the pipeline. They said about...
I have not heard this.
There was some stuff about bad conduct, problematic behaviours, which were going to get worse.
100%. So, and
Okay.
I think, and it's people quite close to Rishi Sunak. So, I think it was about to get worse on a number of fronts, and he just thought, "Fuck it."
Yeah,
and I can say, actually, hat tip to Rishi Sunak, because my entire political career is just going, "Fuck it, let's just give it a go."
Well, so from MPs' points of view, I think it's fair to say, Ruth, I'm sure you've picked up a bit of this. People are really, really, really unhappy. I was in Downing Street. I had former cabinet ministers, MPs, text me going, what is he doing? This is absolute madness. From their point of view, there was one minister who said to me that they thought that he could be facing a confidence vote or that the letters were going in again. That was what one person said. So it's from a position of weakness.
Well, hilariously, apparently since he's called it, more and more letters have gone in because although he's had it approved by the palace, actually Parliament's wash up hasn't finished yet, so Parliament's not been shut. So
I know, I had this
group of people,
this
I can't even say it. I think I'm saying these words out loud. This group of people have been such paper tigers at any of the points that they could have stepped in and really done something. Think they can now do a rear guard action to stop a general election once Pandora's out the bloody box.
This is from one of my sources really late last night, which was there's a lot going around on some WhatsApp groups about how there is still a route to stop a general election. This person says they are utterly clueless and we are in deep trouble. But also, I have to say, at the 22 last night, I was told that a sitting minister asked publicly whether they could submit a letter of no confidence. I do know who it is. I'm not going to say who it is. Or should I say who it is?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got it from 3 sources. I was told it was Andrea Leadsom.
That doesn't surprise me at all, because Andrea Leadsom is what, you know, like whether I think that this is a stupid thing to do. She is somebody with balls. Like she stands and says what she thinks.
Well, Andrea, I asked Andrea, I didn't put her name out last night because I wanted to check with her first because I did have it from 3 sources. Anyway, she basically said, she got back to me and said it's a private meeting, discussions are confidential. which it is, but also leaks. But she didn't deny it. It's just extraordinary.
She would never lie to you.
No, but also the optics. Can you imagine that? Like a minister standing up in front of the party going, "Can I submit a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister?"
A former candidate that got down to the last two to be Prime Minister. To be Prime Minister.
She did.
Party leader. Do you know, we've rolled through so many. I just had to check myself there for a second. But I think, for me, some of the sad part is you saw other people like Tracy Crouch who went on Twitter to kind of publicly say, do you know, I thought I had an extra 6 months, because she'd already announced she was standing down. She'd been a sports minister. She'd had cancer. She's got young kids. Like, there was a whole load of reasons why she was standing down. And she's like, God, there was some stuff I still wanted to do, some questions I still wanted to ask.
Yesterday, most of my afternoon was, and people won't realise this at all, was saying goodbye to people who I've been friends with for like a decade, people you have been in a scrum in a difficult time, like when Joe died. Imagine being in that room and they're not from my political party, but saying goodbye. I didn't see Tracy Crouch, and I texted her this morning and just said, I feel like I've been robbed of saying goodbye to you. I gave Alex Chalk a cuddle in the tea room at like 10 o'clock last night.
Explain who he is.
Alex Chalk is the Secretary of State for Justice.
His seat is Cheltenham.
He had a majority of like in the hundreds.
Yeah.
I mean, he is totally gone.
He's a nice guy though, isn't he?
And some of these people, like, I wouldn't vote for them, don't get me wrong, but to suddenly have to imagine your business is just shutting today, and people you've worked with for a decade, you're going to walk away from them. You all live in different parts of the country. I felt genuinely sad.
This is something that, in the cut and thrust of politics and doing what I do, this is what we don't talk about that much, but it's the sort of human aspect of it, because suddenly, turning on a sixpence, all of these MPs who thought they had a few months before an election to get their house in order, suddenly they're like, we're in a campaign, I could lose my job, I haven't had a chance to say goodbye to my friends. It's absolutely brutal, isn't it? Just coming in, though, as we are talking, just about the flights. The reason I know this in the recording is someone has sent this to me. Rishi Sunak confirms Rwanda flights will not take off before the election. If I'm elected, I'll get the flights off after the election. He says preparations for the first flights will go on regardless of the election. Someone just sent this to me from the Conservative benches with one word: terrible. Yeah. So look, this was one of the reasons that some of his MPs thought he might be going, that he doesn't get the flights away. He said he'd get them away in the summer. Have they been snared up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're getting to the why, and by the weekend, we'll have all the whys. Whether it's scandals that were going to come out, whether it's flights, logistics weren't going to take off.
Can I just say, though, I think you can level many things at the Prime Minister's door. I don't think selfish is necessarily what I would use, because I don't think he would be choosing a time where he thinks the largest number of his MPs will go. He'll be thinking that, summer, there's a feel-good factor. We're about to get into Scotland will have qualified for the quarterfinals. Little England might have done. They might not have for the quarterfinals of the Euros.
Little dig there.
Oh, come on, you guys are heavily tipped to top your group and get a lot further than the quarters. But
I'm not going to get to watch it now, am I, though?
No. So if there are any parliamentary candidates in Scotland who've got tickets for Germany that now can't take them up, do get in touch, because I'll happily take them off your hands for you. But I don't think the Prime Minister was being selfish with this. And also, I don't think allowing a couple of hundred people to get an extra 6 months' wages in terms of MPs actually is selfishness. I think MPs worrying about where the 6 months' wages are coming from, that could be considered selfish.
Well, for what it's worth, I can give you a bit of what the spin machine was spinning at me yesterday.
Go on, then.
So some things I picked up was that there had been these discussions going on. We all knew that. We felt it had sort of dissipated a bit after the locals. The sort of immediate threat to his authority had dissipated. And actually, the party, I would say, has appeared, dare I say it, almost a little bit, better behaved since the local elections, right?
I agree.
So at that point, journalistically, you think, it looks like the kind of summer election is over. Ruth's laughing at me, but she believed it too, baby.
I just think that calling 2 defections in 2 weeks, including crossing the floor directly before PMQs, as better behaved.
No, I know,
shows how bad it's got.
Yeah, I mean that baseline keeps dropping. So what I've picked up is that there was this finely balanced decision, that there were these discussions going on summer, autumn. Apparently Oliver Dowden, the Deputy Prime Minister, was very keen to go early. And he's very close to the PM, as is Alex Chalk, actually, who we were talking about earlier. I heard that Isaac Levido, who's the actual campaign chief, Linton Crosby's protege, we were talking about fattening the pig on the way to market, barnacles off your boats. Apparently he wanted to go long because maybe, as Ruth was talking about last week, he wanted to hone the message. Apparently the Prime Minister took loads of soundings from different people. It is his decision and his decision alone, right? And I think that probably a handful of people would have taken that decision in the room. There would have been James Forsyth, his political secretary, and Bezzy Mate, used to be the political editor of The Spectator. There would have been Liam Booth-Smith, his chief of staff. You know, barely anyone in the room when he decides it. Right, so why did they go now? Part of what we touched on earlier about the economy, right, is there's been 10 months of wage growth and 10 months of falling inflation. It's now to 2.3%, which is near the Bank of England target. Do people feel any better off?
No, and also everybody's tied in. My mortgage went up to nearly £1,000 extra a month, and it's like I'm tied in for 5 years. So even if they had reduced the interest rate, it's actually going to annoy most of the people who've got their because they can't.
And
go
this
down.
is exactly it. So I was chatting with someone who was we were talking about this because I was saying, hang on a minute, I thought you were going to wait for this upturn of the economy. And I think what might be going on is a sort of admission within all of this that one, people are not going to feel materially better off under Rishi Sunak's economic plan in autumn or summer, right? So you might not get the interest rate cut. People are locked in anyway with mortgages, many people. There isn't the headroom necessarily to do another tax cut in the autumn, right? So you're going to say, my plan is working. And everyone's like, yeah, you've been saying that for a few months. We don't feel it, right? So there's that. And Ruth, exactly what you were saying with the flights. So he said, I'm going to get the flights away. And then you get to the autumn and maybe the flights haven't got away or the boats are still coming. So his pitch into the election is it's a choice, right? And he can go in and say, I'm going to get the flights away in the summer. My economic plan is working. Choose me or risk it with that bloke. So in a way, they had to weigh up when to go and they went for July.
But I think the issue as well is you're also looking at the polls and saying there are consistent double-digit polling for reform. Catching them on the hop because they don't have the infrastructure of big parties is probably in the Tories' favour. And reducing that will help.
Yeah.
Also, I think there is more money in the war chest for the Tories than Labour. My worry for this election is it's going to be an awful lot of people telling you why not to vote for other people. And I think in Keir Starmer's view, he's got the change thing, you know, it's on his lecterns, he says it all the time, but he hasn't got the hopey change thing. We need more of the hope from him of what he's going to do. And you're going to get a lot from Rishi Sunak saying he's a flip-flopper, he doesn't believe in anything, he's gone back on everything he ever said. But then you've also got Keir Starmer that's going to speak about the Prime Minister not having delivered, nothing in Britain works anymore, blah, blah, blah. So that the targets for each side are huge. And somewhere in there, some election strategist or advisor is going to have to tell them to tell people what you will do as well, not just what the other guy is going to do badly.
Well, this is what one of Sunak's people said to me about it last night, about the timing and why now. They said he's not afraid and he's completely and utterly confident that his values and principles are aligned with that of the public and he needs to prosecute that argument. I got to tell you what Michael Gove said in Cabinet, because you're going to enjoy this. Because I know that you both love Michael Gove.
I get on well with Michael. He's good company.
He's very good company. He's a raconteur. What did he say in Cabinet?
In Cabinet, he said, because I was quoted this from one of Sunak's teams, you're going to love this. He said in Cabinet, who dares wins, and you dare, and you are going to win.
I think Michael shares an assessment that the polls are quite poor. I think would be a euphemistically way of putting it. But also, Michael Gove is a bit of a political historian, and there is no way that he would have given that quote without knowing that the last person that invoked the SAS mantra of who dares wins was Portillo. And you know about elections and Portillo. One, not becoming the leader and flunking a leadership election. And two, the Portillo moment in 1997.
Are you saying that
So
Michael
I
Gove's
think
trolling the Prime Minister?
I'm not sure if he. I mean, I don't know how cognizant he was at the time, but he's a dreadful flatterer. You're so brave, Prime Minister. And whoever dares wins, and you'll win. Blah blah blah. Like, I mean, that is clear Michael Gove. I mean, he's a dreadful flatterer. I love it. I mean,
yeah, me too. I fall for it every time.
He blows smoke up your arse every time he sees you. It's wonderful. But yes, I mean, there is no way that he won't make the reference with Michael Portillo.
Well, look, let's move on to the optics of it.
Oh, dear
Jesus. I was watching it, and genuinely, whilst it was going on, I was just reminded of the Theresa May speech where she lost her voice and the set fell apart.
Oh my God, no, I was in the audience for that. That is literally the worst
It's like a
political
fever
moment.
dream.
Like, honestly, I mean, I don't actually think I felt worse.
Yeah,
like,
no, I had to leave the room. I was just watching it on the television screen, and I had to leave the room. And I felt a bit similar about watching Rishi Sunak getting. Why on earth would you not just get a man with a brolly to stand next to you?
Because you're on the rich list and you can't have somebody standing with a brolly.
Okay,
like,
so
you
hold
can't.
one yourself.
Well, one you could hold, or you could just do it inside. Have a set inside.
There's a few things about it that I thought. We realise that there's going to be a statement. The whole press pack are now kind of descending on Downing Street. I mean, you know it's serious when like the big TV anchors turn up, and it was absolutely pissing it down. I mean, I was absolutely drenched. And also, I know this is not important to anyone but me, but my bob gets all fluffy and it really upsets me. I am going to buy some hair straighteners that are rechargeable. So wherever I am, I do not have a fluffy bob. It was really unclear to me whether he was going to come out and do the podium or do it inside. And I just thought, he's going to have to do this inside. So I'm on telly and I couldn't sort of say, I said it's going to be a statement from Downing Street. Then the podium guy, as we call him, came out and the speakers came out. I was like, wow, he's coming out. And there's a little break in the rain and he comes out and then it just starts chucking it down. And the optics of a Prime Minister calling a summer election on the basis that there will be a brighter future with the Conservatives, with storm clouds, grey weather, drenched in rain. The optics of that, I would argue that viewers on the television, what they will remember of that day was the Prime Minister got absolutely drenched.
Yeah.
You know, he has to work hard because he's so small and petite to not look like a work experience kid anyway, at an oversized lectern. So the shots from the front look okay, the shots from the side look terrible just because of because how chunky the lectern is that he chose. I don't know why he's not got a slighter lectern to make it less like that. But being absolutely drenched in his trousers that are still American and far too short looks awful. But the boilerplate speech, which was uninspired, that also talks about how he's got a plan and the other guy hasn't. Okay, if your plan is so great, why are you planning to be outside in a thunderstorm when your other man, who apparently has got no plan, has got like a lovely presidential podium and he's inside and he's quite dry?
Yeah, this is it. Honestly, Ruth, this is exactly what he thought when I was doing it. I was like, you're saying you have a plan, but it looks like you can't orchestrate this in a way that doesn't look like a kind of scene from a comedy show. What was also going on was that there was a massive speaker at the bottom of Downing Street as he was speaking and blaring out Reams, Things Can Only Get Better, which was, of course, the anthem of Tony Blair's 1997 campaign and win. And I think that was putting the Prime Minister off a bit. Then, a few minutes later, you get Starmer and they've like mocked up the Prime Minister's briefing room for journalists. So he's got wood panelling behind him. He's got two flags and he's standing at a lectern like he is a Prime Minister. There's one word on the lectern, change. He's totally dry and it looks really slick and professional. So look, I went back to someone and said to them, why on earth did you do it like that? I said, you know, you're going to get a backlash.
It was disastrous.
The explanation was that it's traditional that Prime Ministers come out and declare elections at a podium in the street and that the Prime Minister wanted to do it like that.
Right. So he wanted it to be traditional. He wanted, not because he's on the rich list, not to have a lackey holding an umbrella. He wouldn't have lost a single vote had he done either of those things. Put it inside. Nobody would have been like, well, I'm not voting for him now because I like the traditional Downing Street outing, or I'm not voting for him now because he had someone holding an umbrella over him in the rain. Right, he will lose votes because of the way he launched it.
That's the thing, the idea of tradition and all the rest of it. Well, that's great and all, but like, you're the Prime Minister. You make the traditions.
Yeah.
How fucking incompetent do you have to be to launch a campaign that badly? And how much do you not protect your boss by allowing him to do it or encouraging him to do it? Whoever launched that should have no more import during this campaign than making the tea and running to the shop to get sandwiches.
I have to say, Ruth, that you're
I really hate it. Like, comms isn't that hard, but people make it hard.
you are not alone amongst Conservative colleagues in relaying this to me. This is a visual business, right?
Yeah.
That it's symbolism, isn't it?
Like, wait for a break in the clouds.
Okay.
Like,
well, look.
how hard is that?
Okay, well, I think that Ruth and Jess have decided that that was a pretty dismal start. I mean, metaphorically and literally, with that bloody driving. Honestly, I actually said to the office at about 6:30, I was like, you need to release me and let me back to the office, because I was like, I'm going to get a cold. I was absolutely dry. Anyway, let's take a break for a moment and we'll be back with some of your questions and what's in store for the next 6 weeks. The next 6 weeks. We've talked about the start. What's this election going to be about? What are the big themes? Well, for Sunak, it's about the choice. It's about sticking with him. He'll argue that they're turning the corner on the economy. He said from that lectern as he got drenched, now is the moment for Britain to choose its future and for the Prime Minister choose an umbrella. He did not say that bit. And for Starmer, it's like change. Actually, one of your colleagues, Jess, as the PM was talking, sent me a WhatsApp going, there'll be one word on his lectern. It will be change. This election, we have one singular message, change.
I mean, I think that is going to be the message. That is going to be the narrative. And actually, the narrative for Labour is now they have a chance to set a narrative. I think the change thing is brilliant, and it is what people want, and it will have been tested to death. But that isn't enough. So there is now, this 6 weeks is the opportunity for the Labour Party to go out and talk. We're not talking about necessarily like small retail offers or even necessarily big, like we're going to do this. But the narrative is theirs to set, because Rishi Sunak, I think his narrative has been set by the terrible optics of the way he launched the campaign. But also, we can be heard in a way that he can't be heard a little bit at the moment. And that is a real opportunity for the Labour Party. It's also a massive opportunity to mess it up.
We've had a WhatsApp from Nicola in Aberdeen who says, Ruth, will he stay at Beleaguered or does he move to anything else now?
Well, I think if the polls are anything to go by, he's probably going to move to unemployed at some point. But I think he's got to show himself as a campaigner, and I don't think we've seen that. And what's interesting about this election is that we've not seen either of them campaign. And Jess is absolutely right. There is a bigger microphone for the Labour Party because everyone assumes that they're going to romp to victory. But that comes with huge danger. One, it invites scrutiny and to test things. And one of the charges that the Prime Minister laid in his speech was that, I don't know what Keir Starmer is going to do, and I don't think he does either because he's not told anyone. And actually, that will hit home with people. However, probably not as much as nothing in Britain bloody works. So, I think the worry that I have is that it's going to be a depressing election because Labour is not going to want to tell people what it's going to do in advance.
It doesn't think it needs to.
Because it doesn't think it needs to. Because it thinks that instead of winning on things can only get better, it can win on, well, things can't get much bloody worse, so why not give us a try? Now, they might be right about that, but I actually think they're doing a disservice, to the public if they don't have a stronger narrative and lay out what their vision is for the country and also what they're going to do.
Jess, what was the mood in the Labour Party yesterday?
The initial mood, so I am very, very, very close to most of the people in the shadow cabinet, and nobody has ever infiltrated our WhatsApp group, I just like to say, and so I like to hold my counsel and with trust in these people. the immediate thing was like, come on, let's go and win this sort of thing. It was like pep. But in Westminster, amongst the members of Parliament that I saw, it was just a bit like shell shock as well. And we're saying goodbye to, like, I mean, one of my very best friends, Holly Lynch, the MP for Halifax, is standing down. And so the mood was tempered with both those things. But I would say pep and just look, finally, like we've all been asking for this.
Yeah.
It's funny when you've all been asking for something and then you get it. Like on Christmas morning when you get like the Nintendo and you play it too much and then you're like, oh God, actually, I missed the outsides. Like it is, initially it was just like, shit, we got this thing we were asking for, and it was like, come on, let's go and do this.
I mean, going back to the things about missteps and what could go wrong for Starmer and the polls now and stuff, like for Labour, like they have wanted this election to go now. They'd wanted it in May. They were hammering he's going to chicken out. He's not going to call the election. And now they have got
what they wanted.
I messaged one of Starmer's team actually last night and I went, this is great timing for you, isn't it? And they messaged back and said, this is great for the country. And that will be the message, right?
I mean, there's going to be a wobble at some point. There's going to be some form of poll that is going to like bring it to within single figures or something like that. And it's how does the Labour Party perform under pressure and under scrutiny? And I personally don't think either Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak are the best campaigners in their parties. So I think there could be a little bit of Maybot type stuff going on there. Also, let's not forget that Labour need the biggest swing that we've seen in, I think, post-war history to have a majority of one.
Yeah.
So I don't for one second think that it is likely that the Tories are going to come out of this as the largest party. Yeah. But I do think that, you know, we just have to remember that this isn't necessarily a landslide election. And if everyone puts that on the Labour Party and then suddenly it looks like they're not, then it looks like they're underperforming. And that narrative can become quite strong because a lot of people only tune in a fortnight before. Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you. And it's the biggest uniform swing ever to win an outright majority. It has to be bigger than 12.7%. Apparently.
I think that Ruth is exactly right that people don't tune in. And week one, people are paying a bit of attention. Then they don't come back in until about 9 days before. Yesterday, when I rang my husband and said, this is going to get tiring, he said, what? Like he didn't know that the election had been called. So I just want a massive shout out to most of the people in the country who are not paying the very close attention that we think. And so there are a couple of big incidences, one way or the other. And for Theresa May, it was the nothing has changed moment. A couple of big incidences, you'd be surprised how much of a game change that can make. And so we have to be alive to that.
However, what you said about uniform swing, you don't need a uniform swing to win. That's the thing.
No.
Because there's going to be a ton of tactical voting.
Yes.
So the Lib Dems will pile up votes and seats where they're running second. In Scotland, you know, Labour will do great in some seats. The SNP and Tories fight a lot of the seats, and Labour and the Lib Dems are third and fourth, but a long way behind. So for quite a lot of the country, you've got a top two, and then it's not three-way races. So uniform swing is a bit of a misnomer.
You know, there was a reason that I asked Starmer again a couple of weeks ago about a Lib Dem tie-up, because to get a majority is a huge endeavour. It could be that Labour turn out to be the largest party without a clean majority. He will not rule out some sort of deal with the Lib Dems. He just wouldn't do it. He did with the SNP. I mean, Jess also, he's got the left of the party as well. So if he gets a small majority, he might find himself pretty hamstrung, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Although I did see some brilliant analysis that said if the polling modelling that said that they were going to get the landslide, which I think is a nonsense, that somebody like me could set up an entirely new political party and still have enough members of Parliament to be the official opposition and stand opposite Keir Starmer every week and just say, what a cracking job you're doing. So, you know, it's a plan for the future.
You know, how worried are you about your seat?
I'm not worried about my seat. I think that I will win in my seat, but I think it will be a much harder election than it would have been a year ago because of the issues with Gaza. To be honest, I've got candidates' disease and every single candidate will have it. Every member of Parliament today, even those who've got like a 50,000 majority and weigh their votes, you think you're going to lose. Like, that's the gig. Like, that's what you do. You go into it like going, oh God, like all we're thinking about is the pitfalls in front of people. All we will be talking about is the power and the strength. But the truth is every candidate, and I won't know until I'm there. So I'm going back there today and I'm not coming back to London now. That is it for me here. I've got my stuff in a paper bag, my knickers and things, and I can't really answer that question.
So that candidatitis thing, there's a really interesting journey that every candidate takes. And when an election is announced, everyone that holds it thinks they're going to lose. And everybody thinks at the beginning it's going to be such a hard slog. By the time the votes are counted, even if you know that your goal is to save your deposit, to get 5% or whatever, by the time election day comes around, you always think that you've done enough, or that you righteously should become the next member of parliament for that time, because you've worked so hard, your team's been so good, you've done all the effort. Like, everybody thinks by polling day that they deserve it. Yeah. It's a really interesting journey.
But also, like, just the night when you are actually in the studio and you are watching, we've got nearly 100 counts. Actually, I should also just quickly plug, you electoral dysfunctioners, I've got some wonderful news, which is Ruth and I are going to be on set for Sky News all night on election night. It's going to be me and Ruth and Andy Burnham. We're going to have Trevor Phillips as well. We've got Ed Conway on the charts doing all the graphs and stuff. And then Kate Burley is the anchor baby.
And Sophie Ridge.
And then, yes, the next day, so that's the overnight show. And then the next day, Sophie's anchoring with the wash up and day one of whatever it will be with Sam, my colleague Sam Coates. And we've also got Adam Bolton coming back, baby.
Oh, yeah. And there's Michael Thrasher's doing all the numbers as a top psophologist. Yeah. So it genuinely is pretty heavyweight team you guys have got.
I actually think there's nowhere else to watch it, babies.
I'm going to go to my account and I'm going to find the camera. And me and my son Danny are going to get onto Sky News.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Right, so how is it going to play out next week? Parliament's going to be dissolved on the 30th. The Prime Minister's already been to see the King. Jess, what happens between now and then? I was not really cognizant to all the dissolution of Parliament stuff because I was so in the zone yesterday. What goes on now?
So it's a good question that literally everybody was asking yesterday and nobody seemed to have the answer. So basically what happens, Parliament will continue to sit until Friday. Mm. Parliament doesn't actually dissolve until Thursday.
Thursday next week,
but nobody will be in there. Yes. It's not that they'll be sitting or doing anything.
Okay, so Parliament dissolves next Thursday, but everyone's cleared out. But that means the official election campaign doesn't actually kick off.
The short campaign, we call it.
Yes.
So the short campaign starts, I think, on the 31st of May, and that's when all the spending rules and everything come in. But I just want to make it clear to people listening, what this means is that yesterday I had to say to my staff, get your things and leave. We are not allowed into the building. As of Thursday, I will no longer be a member of Parliament. I will be a candidate in the election. So the sign outside my office in Yardley, I literally have to put a thing over it because I'm not an MP anymore.
So after dissolution, MPs aren't MPs anymore, they're candidates. And we had an email from Sarah. Thanks for this, Sarah. She says, my local MP currently is dealing with a query of mine. What happens to emails, inquiries sent to local MPs once an election's called? It's a good question. What happens, Jess?
It just carries on. Don't worry about that. I carry on doing all of the casework. My staff, they continue in that role. So don't worry. There's absolutely no reason. If anything, you do way more casework for people during the election because you're knocking doors and getting a load of people telling you their problems. So it's absolutely fine.
It's important to stress that point, that all of that work continues. I think what's going to be really interesting for up until Friday, so we're recording this on Thursday morning, so today and tomorrow, because the Lords is the same, we only kind of do all of the kind of stuff we do, and then it's looking like a 6 p.m-ish finish on Friday. It's what actually gets done in the wash-up, because there's some really chunky legislation. After months when actually not that much has been passed, we've got some really chunky legislation. If the victims bill doesn't get through, I mean, I think there's going to be uproar because there's been so much put into that.
Well, also the blood inquiry compensation is in the victims bill. And as somebody who spent literally, I cannot tell you, hundreds of hours writing the amendments that have gone into that stop things like paedophiles having access to their own children and things. It's not small fry, this stuff. This is big stuff. Okay. And who knows what's going to happen in the wash-up.
One other story I did want to talk about was Craig Mackinlay. He's the Conservative MP for South Thanet, got a standing ovation at PMQs when he returned to Parliament after having both his hands and feet amputated due to sepsis. He says he wants to be known as the first Bionic MP. I know Craig a bit. I'd actually covered that Thanet seat when he was basically fighting off Nigel Farage. I knew he'd been really ill. I didn't realise the extent. I was shocked when I saw the interview he did with GB News. It was really moving. Jess, you've also had some personal experience with sepsis.
Yeah, I have. I got sepsis and it nearly killed me. I think it's the biggest killer of women postpartum and it is so avoidable. Now, I think Craig Mackinlay's case was, and he said this in his amazing speech in Parliament yesterday,
it's very
really moving and uniting as we're about to all be divided. This beautiful uniting, how he got through it without crying, I have no idea, just thanking his family. And it was very moving to be in there for it. But what he said was the prevention in his case wouldn't have been there, but in most people's cases it is. And I imagine there's going to be a huge amount of attention on this.
And he said not only does he want to be the first Bionic MP, but he wants to raise awareness about sepsis. I have an experience too, which is nothing like as bad as it was for you and what happened to Craig, but I also had a really serious infection last summer and I was hospitalised twice and was in for nearly a week the second time around on tons of antibiotics. It took me weeks to recover. But the thing that really struck me with Craig's story and what you've just said, Jess, is the speed in which you suddenly are in a lot of pain, but you just think, I've got a temperature, I've eaten something bad.
And I think that's one of the problems that we have now is post-COVID, everybody knows that the NHS is stressed. Everybody knows things about people are, I don't want to worry people, or I don't think I can get a GP appointment or whatever. And that's the kind of danger. And that actually almost everybody that works in the medical profession will tell you, if you have concerns, go. We're not shut. Like, it's tough, but do not feel that you cannot come to us. We are here for you, and we would rather that we saw you than didn't see you.
Yeah.
And I just think with Craig, I was reading an article and his wife had said, when she realised and he woke up from intensive care and realised that his limbs, that they were going to have to be amputated, his wife said, I'm an optimist and this is the start of our new life. And actually for him to come back...
It's unbelievable.
I know, but for him to come back with such grace and courage
and humour
and honestly and to be now campaigning to get more understanding about this life threat can kill you. I just think it's like, you take that from a terrible experience and you try and turn it into something positive.
While being clear-eyed about everything that he's lost, because he did say, the feet I can kind of deal with. It's the hands, the fact that I can't hold hands with my wife, I can't touch her, I can't, I can still cuddle my daughter. He's got a young daughter and she's adapted really well because kids adapt and stuff, but he's like, it's losing that sense of touch that, and I can't imagine that. I can't imagine it. I feel for the guy, I feel for his wife, I feel for his daughter, I really do.
Okay, well look, we are out of time. Have our weekend plans changed?
I have literally no concept of what I'm doing at the weekend. I was actually meant to be flying to the West Bank. I don't know whether I am still doing that. I'll be on a street in Yardley near you. What about you?
I have not got a clue. Sam Coates has been dispatched to a Sunak speech. Apparently he's going to do like all the four nations in the next 40 hours. That's Sunak, probably Sam as well. I think I have not a Scoobies what I'm doing this week.
All over the country.
I don't know what I'm doing for the next 6 weeks.
You're going to be going from Accrington to Aberdeen.
Electoral dysfunction will still be dropping into your feeds over the campaign. God knows where I'll be doing it from, but I will be doing it. WhatsApp voice note us on 07934 200 444. Over and out. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.